Hello and welcome to For Fox's Sake. This is the Women's Football Show with me, your host, Lily Saunders. It's an absolute pleasure to be the host of the first ever For Fox's Sake Women's Live show. It's incredibly important to everyone here to be bringing you coverage of all of Leicester teams as they progress through the season, and we can't wait to see what direction the Foxes take us this season. So we'll keep you up to date along the way. I'm incredibly delighted to be joined today by Kerrie Cosh, the official stadium announcer for the Leicester City Women's team. We're so pleased to have you on the show. So very welcome to you, Kerrie.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be part of something that is just getting started.
Yeah, no, we're very excited. So today we're going to run through a little bit of kind of the highlights of the last game against Man City. We're then going to have a bit of a deep dive into your professional career, Kerrie, and then we're going to finish off with a bit of a preview for the last match of the season against London City Lionesses on Sunday. So we'll get into it, shall we? A bit of background on Leicester City Women, promoted in 2021, obviously, that season post-COVID, and competing in their fourth WSL 1 season this year. They sit 10th in the table at the moment following this 3-0 defeat to Manchester City. Sort of what was that experience for you on Sunday, Kerrie? I mean, watching on as an announcer, and they did really well for about 70 odd minutes, I think, didn't they, the women's side? So, yeah, what were your sort of impressions from that game?
To be honest with you, for a start, obviously, arriving at the King Power, I've got to be honest, I've got to hand it to all the fans for the 90 minutes that got torrentially rained upon, first and foremost. Obviously, those conditions are always tough conditions as a player, as a spectator, working a game. However, ultimately, I will say that was the most positive defensive 73 minutes that I think I've seen from Leicester City this season in terms of actually really grinding for each other. Obviously, we played a 5-4-1, I believe it was in the end.
Yeah.
And the addition of Janice Cayman, obviously Fox's captain, coming into the back line and really leading that back line throughout the game, I think made a lot of difference. It was quite clear that coming into this game, we were not really expected by anybody to get anything against league leaders who are now 6 points clear. But I think what we can really take away from that is that we really can defend, we really can. And I think it was just that small lack of composure at one point that unfortunately did lead to that goal. And once the door was open, it was almost like City really took it up a notch, having played Champions League football, having played football at that level, their composure and relaxation upon the ball and the possession game that they were playing all together just made it such a hard combination to defend against once that goal had gone in. But however, I will say in their defence as well, I don't think Khadija Shaw would necessarily be chuffed with her performance. While she did score 2 goals, unfortunately, in the first half, she had several opportunities to score more. And I think as a player of her calibre and her level, I think Bunny will probably be disappointed with the fact that, it was only the 2. And then obviously Caroline came on in the second half. There was a substitution for Caroline. She came onto the pitch and she was an instant game changer. And, you'll say that yourself, like she came onto the field and it just felt like she was off the bench. She was that option for Man City. And you just felt like she was constantly attacking our goal. And for our team to defend against like that, to defend against a team of that quality for that period of time, I think was fantastic. So I think as much as we'll be really hard done by the actual final scoreline, I think we really showed that if we were playing a team that wasn't the current league leaders and we were defending like that, I truly believe that it might have been a 1, but realistically, we could have probably got a point.
Definitely. I so agree with you. And it's something that I read about pre-game. Rick Passmore wanted players to adopt his, like, sort of their identity, and I think they really showed that in terms of their intent, to receive every ball, to intercept. I think they had 11 interceptions to Man City's 4 before that first goal. So I think that really shows the kind of determination and the drive. And that's probably, like you say, instilled from the return of Janice Cayman. You've got your talisman at right back or at kind of right centre back, because they were playing that back five. And I think, you know, the likes of Sam Tierney, a bit of an unsung hero, I think, in terms of 1v1 duels. She was winning a lot of those. Olivia McLaughlin did really well defensively as well. And for her, you know, she's a playmaker in the midfield, and having someone like that actually do the work and get back and want to move from defence to attack all the time is what you need. And I think that's what worked really well for them for 70 minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And I also would add to your point about Liv. I think she is a real pocket rocket. You know, she's a small player. She's extremely strong on the ball. It takes a lot to get her off that ball.
Yeah.
But not just that, she's constantly in the thick of those tackles. Her and Sam Tierney together as a central midfield team, I think work really well in that sense of things, that they both are always turning up for the team. And I think that's really important when you've got players like that. And also a big shout out to the fact that Asmita Ali, I think she has consistently performed for Leicester this season. And this week she switched from left back to right back.
Yeah, she
And
was out of
I
position,
thought her performance was fantastic, you know, considering the constant man marking, the ability for her to get up the pitch, but also stay back when she needed to. I think she has all the makings of a fantastic, fantastic defender who's only going to get better with time.
Yeah, and it's having those young talents like Asmita Ali, Liv McLaughlin, you know, involved in the under-23 side as well in terms of the Lionesses. You want that in a team like Leicester. You want that calibre, but you also want that just pure determination to just win every ball and make every run. So I definitely agree with you there. I thought defensively as well, Celeste Beret had a great game, bar that first Man City goal, which she miskicked, I think, and then Bunny Shaw bundled home. But I think on the whole, she didn't really put a foot wrong until then. And same with Thibaut, I think, as well as Asmita Ali. I think both Beret and Thibaut, you know, man-marked the whole game, did their job. But like you said before, once City opened that door, it was hard for them to kind of pick their heads up, because I think they were going for that point. You know, a team like City, you don't really go into a game like that thinking, yes, we can definitely get the 3 points. You kind of want to get the most out of it as possible, right? So
Absolutely.
shout out to them too.
And I would say that defensively, we do have squad depth there. So going towards the back, you know, we've got Nelly Lass on the bench. We've got Sari Case on the bench. Both of those players can come on and really make an impact defensively. So I think at the back, we are not short of options. However, I do feel like in the January transfer window, it will be interesting to see what we bring in to support our front going players, and especially so our attackers, because I think Hannah Kane and Shannon O'Brien have got significant ability to go forward and really threaten every single team in the WSL's defence. You know, they're fantastic players.
Definitely.
However, I think the one thing we might be missing is just that central striker, that out and out striker who is going to sit in that centre, get that service and clinically finish every opportunity. I think that was the one thing we noticed about the attack, is that Shannon and Hannah were really throwing themselves forward into that attack. Obviously, our wing backs were doing a fantastic job of getting up. However, I think we just didn't have that finisher in the middle, and I don't think we currently have that on our bench at this moment in time. So it will be interesting to see if somebody comes in to help bolster that attack just a little bit further, because it was clear that our tactics this weekend were very much to defend. And it was the right tactic to go for. You know, it ultimately was, because you looked at the performance defensively and it was brilliant. You know, there were places in that first part of the game where Man City's manager was actively saying, this is great football from them. This is great. And I don't think that they were expecting on that Man City bench to be sat there thinking, what do we do? Who do we bring on now? You know, how are we going to get this game changed? And I think that's really important that we get in teams' heads like that and be like, this is a really strong defensive squad. So, you know, we've got to shut them down at the other end.
And that's the difference between the bottom and the top of the table, isn't it? Because yes, Leicester have brilliant options in terms of defence and in terms of the back line, but lack options up front. Whereas Man City just have the pick of the bunch, don't they, in terms of their international players, and just think, oh, we've not scored for 70 minutes, let's just bring on Carolyn, you know, and that's going to change the game. So they have that luxury, and I think Leicester did really well with what they had to get some sort of result out of that. It might not be in terms of points or scoreline, but in terms of their identity, going back to that, and in terms of their resilience, I think they really got something out of that game. In terms of options up front, actually, I wanted to add on to your point as well. We had Jutta Rantala meniscus tear earlier on in November. I mean, she wasn't necessarily one of those out-and-out strikers, but she was kind of central and has been central to Leicester the last few seasons. And, you know, Emily Van Egmond then had to step in once Erik Stotter was forced off in the 35th minute and play that kind of holding midfielder role, hold up play and then send it forwards for O'Brien and Kane. But I think you're right. I think they want someone who dominates up front, who can run between the lines, who can, you know, score with their head as well, because I think Liv McLaughlin, Hannah Kane can put in some really decent crosses, and there was just no one ever there to get on the end of them. So definitely something for Leicester City to look at in January. Totally
Definitely.
agree.
And obviously with Utah being out for a little while now, I think it's really important to find a driver of the attack, because one thing about Utah is that she is absolutely lethal from range. And that's one option that we really had in that team, that she can hit a ball. She can strike a ball so unbelievably sweetly. But as you were saying as well, you know, with Hannah and Shannon and Missy even putting those balls into the middle, it's finding that clinical finisher, you know, that person who is going to really change the game. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, whether we go down the route of potentially acquiring by purchase, or we look to loan somebody who's maybe not getting the minutes on the pitch from the WSL, who might be able to provide that. Because there are fantastic strikers in other teams that are currently potentially not getting the time minutes, on the pitch that they want. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Let's talk about Missy Goodwin, though, because it was her first WSL appearance this season. Obviously, she'd been hampered by injury, and then there was a bug going around, which I think affected Janice Kamen as well, which is what Rick Passmore was saying. So it was great to have her back, albeit for the kind of less good 20 minutes of the match. But having her on the bench as well, giving that extra option, that extra burst of kind of creativity, will, I think, really put Leicester in good stead in terms of this next match against London City Lionesses, but also the rest of the season in January and further on. So, yeah, it was great to see her back, wasn't it?
It really was. And I think that's the one exciting thing, being an announcer as well, noticing that players come back, because Missy can change games. She's changed games in the WSL countless times. You know, she's scored some fantastic goals. I think for 2 seasons in a row, she held best goal of the season. You know, and out of nowhere, she can create something. And that's one thing that I think we've really missed, that ability to just rapidly be able to change a game with an attack. And I think having Missy back in the squad, it'd be interesting to see how long it takes her to refine that form again. But I think she will find it. But, you know, having been out and things, we've kind of been a little bit hampered by injuries here and there. We've not really had a run without a crucial player being gone. So it'll be interesting to see, now that she's back, being able to find her feet once again and being able to get those shots off on goal, because I think that's one thing that she has really got. It's that ability to get a shot away.
Definitely. And let's talk a bit about that, because you mentioned it's something fun to do as an announcer. Obviously, that is your current position at the moment. I just wanted to sort of do a deep dive into your career. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Kerrie. What's your kind of footballing background? Did you play growing up? Did you watch? Are you a Leicester City fan? And what does the sport of football mean to you, essentially, and how does that impact your work as an announcer?
So interestingly, I have played football since I was about 8. I played women's football. I played girls' football. I used to play on a all-boys team that ended up having to be a mixed team because I was the only girl on the team. Won a couple of local county cup competitions, won a league a couple of times throughout my career, went to uni, played at uni. I actually went to Nottingham Trent Uni, so it was really connected with Notts County. And at the time, players like Aileen Whelan were there. You know, and it was fantastic to kind of get that opportunity to play with and around players of that caliber, you know. And obviously I definitely was not committed enough to be a first team player. So I kind of stuck to the enjoyable sort of second and third teams.
You had fun.
Yeah. Do you know what? It was very enjoyable, but also I think it made me realise that a career was way off the cards for me as an actual player. However, I still enjoy a kickabout here and there, and I still will play like power league sort of stuff every so often. And throughout my whole life, football has been a huge part of it as a spectator as well as a fan, as somebody who's gone to stadiums. I've got a mark off of how many grounds I've been to in the UK, and the number's quite high, but it could be higher. And over my time, as a football fan, I've really enjoyed it. But for me, things in football, work in football really started in 2018. I became a vision mixer at Leicester City men's team. So I used to go along to the men's games, and I used to control all the screens that people see in the fan concourses, they're called.
Okay.
So where all the fans get their pies and their Melton Mowbray and Red Leicester sausage rolls. Yeah, all the TVs there, and some of the in-stadium ones as well. So basically controlling those. And that's how it kind of started for me. And I did that for quite a few years behind the scenes. And I really enjoyed the job. I got to go and watch the game at the end of the day. And at the same time, I was controlling what fans see. So I really enjoyed that for years. However, when the women's team moved their games to the King Power, probably about 6 months after they moved them, I had a chat with the late, great Brad Varnum, and we were just talking about what I was doing outside of Leicester and what I was doing outside of the vision mixing. And I mentioned that I was a cover presenter on BBC Radio 1 at the time, because that's my other work. I'm a presenter at the BBC. And he was like, what on earth? Like, you didn't tell me any of this stuff. And I said, I've been a presenter for a little while. I'm on national radio 3 times a week. And he kind of said to me, right. Yeah. And I think at the time he was a bit taken aback. So he handed me a clipboard that had 4 lines on it that were basically his script. He rarely had a script, did Brad, because he was such a professional. He'd done the job so long. However, that day he'd created 4 specific lines that he was going to do as his intro and his welcome to the game. And he handed me the clipboard and he went, read this a sec. So I picked up the clipboard and I read the lines, and I got about 1.5 lines in. And Brad was like, no, stop, just stop right there. And I was like, right, okay, so he's going to roast me now and tell me that was absolutely terrible, because I kind of wanted to be a stadium announcer. I always knew I wanted that job. I was always fascinated by stadium announcers. But I was thinking, he's going to tell me this is never going to happen. So we went back upstairs to the office, and he got chatting to our bosses, who all sit in the media suite during games. And they're all sat in there at the same time. Brad walks in full voice, and he's like, right, boys, I've got Kerrie here. Did you know that she's a presenter on national radio? And she's also seemingly quite a good stadium announcer. So I can't make the Man United fixture next weekend. She can cover me. Can't you, Kerrie? And looked over at me.
And you went,
yeah. And I said it so lacking confidence at the time that I was actually capable of doing, because I was thinking, oh my word, like, I can't just do a game against Man United in the WSL.
What have you got yourself into?
Yeah. And he said to me, you'll be absolutely fine. You'll be fine. And all week leading up to the game, because the management obviously took notice of what he said, all week leading up to the game, I was thinking, I can't do this. I'm not capable of this. I can't just be a stadium announcer. No way. Next Sunday, I was stood there with the mic in my hand in the middle of October, ready to go against Manchester United. So I did do it, basically. And that's how I got into stadium announcing, which is a bit of an odd one. Well, but I'm a firm believer.
Yeah, all it takes is that one person to really believe in you, doesn't it? And I think you've mentioned before on your socials how important Brad was as a mentor, but also as an ally. And, being a woman in football, sometimes you don't get opportunities just handed to you on a plate, but sometimes they do crop up, and you need people to believe in you, I think, and to give you an opportunity to showcase that. And I think Brad giving you that platform to go and show what you can do is obviously foundational, and has really, I mean, I can feel the passion for football through the screen from you, Kerrie. So yeah, that's amazing story.
I do think, obviously, having looked back on that moment, like I've said it all the time, and I will continue to say it for the rest of my career, however short or long that may be.
Mm.
That I owe Brad absolutely everything for the things that he did, not just helping me become an announcer in the first place, but the confidence that he instilled in me in that first season, when I did at times feel shaky. You know, obviously I
Yeah.
broadcast to a larger audience than that, having done the radio and things like that. And, you know,
Yeah, of
it
course.
wasn't the largest gig, but it was the first time I'd done a gig where I could properly see all the people that were there.
Mm.
And I just felt like, you know, every single time that there was a mistake, or, you know, something didn't quite go right for me, or I didn't deliver something as planned, I think he was always kind of there to give me that guidance and that
Mm.
feedback as well. And I think that was so important. You know, in this job, there's not a lot of us. There's
No.
not a lot of women stadium announcers. It's not
Yeah.
a job typically that often women would hold. And
No.
that's been pointed out to me by a lot of fans along the way. You know, I get a lot of mums, dads, young girls come up to me and sort of say, you know, how did you get the job? And like, how
Mm.
can I do the job? And I think sometimes they're a bit taken aback that there is a female stadium announcer at the club. But I think it's really important that we get more into the game and let people know that it is a possibility to be a stadium
Yeah.
announcer. You know, there's no specific restrictions or restraints that stop you from doing that. But I
No.
do think that it is a place where I think a lot of the time, historically, stadium announcers have been in front of a lot of people. You know, people can
Yeah.
see me down at the touchline every
Yeah. Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
People can see my face and they can hear my voice. And I think, you know, there is that kind of worry that you are somewhat of a face of the club. You're the one that people
Yeah.
can see during the games.
Definitely.
However, I don't think that should be something that we should shy away from. And I think it's really important that we continue to grow the number of announcers that are coming through that are women.
Mm.
Um, you know, I owe him everything for everything that he's done. And it's become a bit of a thing amongst fans that before the game, me and Brad have a chat. So he's got a plaque to the right hand side of the tunnel of the King Power Stadium that got put in just at the very start of the season. And every single game, I go up to that plaque and we have a little chat. We have a chat for about a minute or so. And I literally say to him at the end, I hope your male modelling career up there is going great, Brad, because he always joked that he wanted to be a male model. And that is what I do every game, because I
Yeah.
always feel that he is constantly with me. And I don't think that I'd be here without him taking that risk and taking that punt on me as an
Yeah.
announcer. And, you know, whatever games I would do for Leicester, whether it's women's, whether it's men's, I think I'll always have that instilled in me that he was the driver in actually making me believe that I could do it. And now, you know, I'm nearly 4
Definitely.
seasons in at this point, but I've got to a point where I love the job. I absolutely love the job. I love going to watch the game every week. You know, I'm getting paid essentially to go and watch a team I would pay
Yeah.
to watch.
Yeah.
And the relationships I've managed to build up with the players, you know, I see them in passing all the time. We have a good laugh. And it's got to that point where it's really, really enjoyable as a job. And I think, you know, you get a challenge every so often, something will happen. Or, you know, for example, this year in women's football with the death of Matt Beard, you know, having to do
Yeah.
the memorial and the silence and lead that before the game. You get your challenges like that where you are going to have to change the tone. But
Yeah.
I enjoy those challenges. I think it's really important that fans get that experience all round of having an announcer that is truly passionate about what they do, but
Mm.
also having that experience of knowing that when something has happened,
Yeah.
that I'm still going to be the voice that's going to guide you through it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's that consistency, isn't it? The fans come to the stadium, they hear your voice, they go, right, this is great. This is how I love my Sundays going. I've got Kerrie on the mic and I've got, you know, Leicester City Women to come and enjoy. So I definitely think that's so important, having that same voice consistency. And, you know, even you having that conversation with Brad every game, people come, they expect that. And that's all part of the fan experience as well, isn't it? So, yeah. Wow, that sounds honestly incredible, Kerrie. I'm really envious of your job. I'd love to be a stadium announcer, 100%. What about sort of a day in the life of a stadium announcer then? What's your kind of, you know, you wake up, then you get to the King Power. What's the rest of it? How do you set yourself up to give it your best performance?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you, Lily. The prep actually starts a few days before, because
Mm.
every single game that we do, I will literally watch a short half of the team that we're playing, mainly for two things. One, so I can kind of get familiar with what every single player looks like, because we don't always have a thing called a feed coming through to the game. So you can't always see upstairs in the gallery. If, for example, my media team's upstairs and I'm downstairs, they can't always see who scored the goal. So it's really important for me to be able to actually identify the players on the pitch. In the first instance, because a lot of the time you do see the odd scramble, you see the odd scrappy goal, and you're thinking, who scored that? Like, what on earth happened just there? But it's really important sometimes for me to be able to actually, you know, as somebody who is spectating the game, to just be ready to go if somebody scores. You know, I always pretty much know who scored the Leicester goal. Like, I'm so familiar with the faces, the names, everyone, but the opposition, it's not always the case. You know, you can see players as much as you want, but realistically, when they're actually out there and you're just focusing on a very small number on the back of a shirt, it can be hard. So I watch half the game for that, but also because of the commentary, because I like to make sure that my pronunciations are spot on. So I will run through the team until I literally let them roll off my tongue. So throughout the week, I'll drive around in my car. And it's become a thing where people have rung me, and I've been in the middle of this, where I start just saying the player names and reeling off the names that I think that I'm going to struggle with at the weekend. So I go into the game kind of like that. I'm very confident of the fact that I know the player's correct pronunciation. And I know that not all announcers are necessarily 100% wanting to be bang on all the time. And sometimes, you know, with some teams, even their running joke is that they do deliberately get opposition names wrong. However, it's a thing, isn't it? Because it's
psychological.
Who? And you know, for me as an announcer, I think because one of the first ever away fixtures I actually worked, one of the away players did come up to me and said, "You are the first player to pronounce my name correctly in the WSL, and I've been here for a year." And she was so grateful for that, that actually from now on, I kind of, you know, for the sake of the game and making sure that it's a professional job, I want to get every player's name bang on, because at the end of the day, like, whilst you do kind of want that little bit of throwing off the opposition, I think the best way to do it is probably just being a little bit more subdued than getting their name wrong. But that's just my view, you know.
Well, it's respectful as well, isn't it? You know, getting people's names.
Yeah. And also, I don't really want to go out on the telly sometimes when we're on a broadcast, you know, having said the wrong player name. It's just, you know, it's the familiarity with players. So I get familiar with the players, and that's how it starts. Then I arrive at the stadium probably like 2 hours before kickoff. I usually grab myself a drink, get a coffee, get a Red Bull, whatever I fancy, really, you know, just to kind of get hyped up, but not too hyped up, because I don't like to sound too shouty on the mic. I like to be somewhere in the middle, whereby I'm soaking up the atmosphere and kind of going with the vibe. Do you know what I mean?
Defo.
So I do that. Then I head downstairs. I get my mic and my headset ready to go. And usually I just do a quick mic check in the King Power, and we'll make sure that I'm at the right levels with the audio people. And I'll also have a chat with the director who's managing all the visuals. So you see all the visuals on the stand. So before the game, obviously you get the big fox eyes and the heartbeat and the montage of the women's team. So we kind of just double check our timings, make sure we're all aligned for that, make sure we're okay on the walkout. And then I will kind of stand there, and I'll get my welcome ready. I don't script anything in terms of my welcome anymore, because I roll with what I need to roll with. For example, you know, my welcome for the last fixture of 2025 against London City Lionesses is pretty self-explanatory. However, I do want to kind of get in that sense of festivity at the same time. But usually I'll think it through, you know, 10 minutes before then, and then I wait for the players to kind of start to appear just before the tunnel. And then while I'm doing that, I'll kind of be rolling off my tongue all the team names one more time, just to make sure, you know, that I've kind of ran with it, and there's no surprises in there. You know, it's usually players that I've clearly seen in those games. You know, I watch a lot of football myself, so there's not a lot that throw me off. But every so often there might be a new player come into the squad, and I'm like, oh, they didn't feature. So sometimes if I'm unsure, I'll just quickly check the pronunciations with that team and their media team, which is quite good. And then about 10 past, usually the players, the goalkeepers come out, and we'll do a quick introduction and a welcome. We get to about past. So if the game's say at like 12 o'clock, for example, about past or so, we'll run through the team lineups. That includes substitutes and the officials of the game. We'll kind of do a little bit here and there to let people know that there's an opportunity to win prizes at half time by doing a penalty shootout. And then we get to about 50. And that's when Clubfoot and Underdog both hit, which are, of course, the two Kasabian tunes that the team will generally come out to. And that's go time for me. Just before then, I'll have a chat with Brad. And that's when I was saying about the people looking over the tunnel. You know, a lot of the fans who are season ticket holders have started to really clock on to my chat with Brad. So they'll be looking over the edge of the tunnel trying to figure out if I've done it yet. So I'll usually do that just before Clubfoot hits. And then about 5-2, that's when the players walk out. They come out, the post horn plays, the post horn finishes into our next bed. And as a radio person, you'll kind of know that the bed is what you speak over.
Yeah.
And then we do it. We do the starting 11s, and usually in my background, I can kind of hear the drummer if the drummer's in the stadium that day, because more often than not, we will have somebody there who's playing the drums.
Awesome.
If we've got a drummer, I will usually try and make sure that my lineups are in order with that. But also because now we've got lineup cards for the women's players, it obviously comes up on the screen for the Leicester team individually. So we kind of run with that, you know, and it's getting that done. And then the game starts. And then for me, it's just all the basic match play stuff. It's the substitutions, the added time, the goals. And that's kind of how the shift works. And then at the end of the game, when it's full time, I'll go and do some post-match media. So usually a couple of players are invited to chat to a couple of the fans, and I'll do a short Q&A with them about the game. But then depending on the result, we'll kind of talk about what's next. Obviously, like especially so with the December ones, we've tried to make them a little bit festive, you know, what's on your Christmas list, that sort of thing. And then I'll shut down all the tech downstairs, and that's it. That's me done. So that's kind of a match day running order and what I do.
Awesome. You're involved in everything as well. It's not literally just talking on the mic. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So thank you so much for that insight. We're going to really, really quickly touch on the London City Lionesses game, the last of the season. Last time out against London City Lionesses. This is the first time they're meeting in the WSL, but they have played each other in the Subway League Cup, and that was a 1-0 victory for Leicester City, away from home as well. So again, talking about identity, you know, putting out that performance away from home is really important. It was Jutta Rantala inside the first 2 minutes, and then that was the end of the goals. London City coming off the back of a loss as well, against Brighton, 1-0. They conceded 3 yellow cards, which I thought was interesting and potentially something that Leicester can exploit. Can they draw fouls in good areas potentially? But ultimately, London City Lionesses sit higher in the table. They sit at 6th. They've got an absolutely star-studded team, really. Number of top internationals. You've got Grace Gioro, Kosovaris, Lani, Linari of Italy, Alana Kennedy, the Australian centre-back, and then Katie Zellerman and Nikita Paris, who've both recently been involved with the Lionesses. So, I mean, that's half of a team, and that's just an insane amount of top-class internationals. So, what are we looking at, do you think, Kerrie? And maybe score predictions, tactics-wise, what do you think the Foxes need to do?
Well, looking at the performance against Brighton, being honest, it was only a 6-minute goal, wasn't it? That basically was the difference between the two. I think it was Kiko Seiki who scored.
Yeah, it was. Japanese player, yeah.
So my personal view is that I think we're going to go on the attack from the start, and we're going to try and get ourselves a quick early goal, because I think we've got to put the stamp on the fact that we're at home, our fans are there, our fans are supporting, our fans are very vocal and very loud, and obviously as an announcer that's one thing you want to see, but as a player that's one thing you really want to hear and see. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a more attacking lineup initially. I don't know if we'd go for a 5-4-1 against them. I think we'd throw more players forward instinctively. And I think that's probably what we're going to have to do this weekend, because realistically, it was that concentration lapse from London City at the start that really changed the game. And then whilst they, you know, defensively, they were called upon. I think there was a missed penalty there. They couldn't put away a penalty.
There was,
Brighton, so they clearly defended really well. But I just think that we're going to have to go on the attack early. And I think we're really going to have to prove ourselves. We've beaten this team. At the end of the day, we have beaten this team. Whether or not it was in the WSL, the fact it was a Subway Cup, I don't think matters. I think we've proven that we can score goals against this team. We've proven that we can have a clean sheet against this team. I think we just need to do more of the same. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, whether or not we'll put out a slightly different lineup, or whether we'll try and keep things quite similar to the Man City game, because defensively we were fantastic. We've touched upon that already. But are we going to throw more forward in the attack this time round? You know, are we going to start with Missy, Shannon and Hannah? Or, you know, what are we going to go for? That, I think I'm really intrigued to see, because I think this is the first time in a while that we haven't played one of the top four. In the our last few fixtures have been like, what, Arsenal, Man City, that kind of vibe. So I think we'll be pleased for that respite of having not playing the massive teams, because this is a team that we could potentially get something against. So I think this is a nice one to finish for in the festive period. But I do think the pressure is slightly on the team to, you know, go into that Christmas break with some real positivity. And I really do hope that this weekend we get that. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are, Lily, on this, but obviously, you know, going into Christmas and getting that win, I think is so important. A couple of seasons ago, way back in 2022, I remember going into Christmas break where we lost 8-0 to Chelsea at home. And I remember seeing the level of disappointment on the players' face. You know, I'm not saying that will happen again, but what I am saying is that disappointment of losing before Christmas break, it lit a fire under the team, and they came out fantastically in January. But I think having that positivity going into the break and not having to search for it after would be so important.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. I don't think we'll see a back five. I think Passmore will put out definitely a more attacking team. I'd really like to see Liv McLaughlin get another start. I'd like to see her come up against Freya Godfrey, actually. Freya Godfrey's one I didn't mention in the lineup, but I think she is London City's key threat. She's a really exciting young talent to watch. She's so technical. Her vision is excellent of the game. So I think if they can neutralise Godfrey, if they can stop her passing game, if they can stop her kind of through balls, I think Leicester really have a game on their hands, and it's definitely one they can win. What are your final score predictions? And then we'll wrap up.
I always hate to do the predictions, because as somebody that, you know, I would love to see us get a 2-0. I would love to see us get a 2-0, and I'm really hoping that we could. I mean, I'd settle for a 2-1 and I'd settle for a 1-0, but realistically, I'd love to see 2 goals at the King Power before Christmas. I think that will be the boost that everybody needs, you know. And obviously, Lionesses have had their own great news this week, especially so with Isabel Goodwin re-signing for the next couple of years. And obviously, she's a massive prospect for Lionesses in the future. You know, she's 22. And they have obviously had that boost this week. But I do largely think that the main reason as to why Brighton and Hove Albion won against them last weekend was because of a fantastic goalkeeping performance. You know, Ndozi was absolutely faultless. So if Yanina or Olivia can get a start in and they can come out like that, I don't think they've got a chance. You know, I think we have a real pedigree of fantastic goalkeepers and fantastic back four players, you know, but I think we could potentially see a 2-0 or a 2-1. But I'm going to be really optimistic and say a 2-0.
I totally agree with you. I think 2 unanswered goals, a clean sheet for Leipzig, who's made 39 saves in the last 9 games, by the way. She's a top keeper. And she did really well against Man City, I thought, especially in the first half. So I definitely think 2-0, that really sets a marker that the bottom teams in the table can compete with the mid-tier teams, and it makes the WSL more exciting. And like you say, it sets up Leicester City really well for January. So 2-0 prediction from both of us. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in, and thank you for Fox's sake for having myself, and thank you, Kerrie, for joining us. So hopefully see you for another episode in the future, but best of luck Sunday announcing, and see you later.
Honestly, thanks so much for having me. It's been fantastic to be on the show, but also I do want to say how incredibly bowled over I am by all the fans who come to the women's games and come and support the team. I think week after week after week at the King Power, it just amazes me how vocal they are. And I don't think my job would be as much of a joy if I didn't have that support of the fans behind me all the time. It's you know, it's been phenomenal, and I really hope that continues into 2026. You know, not just people supporting the team, but people getting behind those players. I think that's what they really need. So thank you for having me, and thanks to the fans.
Oh, amazing. It's a testament to the women's game, isn't it? How far we've come. Great. Thank you so much.